Hello and welcome to another episode of Levy's Customs. Today we're going to be taking a look at the next laptop in our line of Lenovo gaming laptops that we've been doing. Last time was the Y510, and today we'll be taking a look at the Y510P. But first, I'd like to apologize for the lack of content on my channel. Life has gotten pretty busy lately. Girlfriend moved in, job has been getting a little bit busier. That and finances have been a little bit tighter, and finances are required to buy computers, buy parts. But I will try from now on to do at least once a month, or I should say one video a month. But we'll have to see, as my video editor has been pretty busy as well. So we'll see. So we will be taking a look at the Lenovo Y510P, put it through some benchmarks, some Cinebench, and I'll tell a little bit of some of the cool things there is with it. Now, this model of laptop is the high-end version, like all the bells and whistles that you can get as options for this laptop, whereas the previous laptop we looked at, it didn't have it. It was just kind of the base model. So this one actually has a 1080p screen, whereas the other one had a smaller resolution, closer to 720p. This machine comes with an Intel Core i7-4700MQ, which is a 4-core, 8-thread CPU, a base clock speed of 2.4 gigahertz, and a boost clock of 3.4 gigahertz. Two NVIDIA 755Ms in SLI power the 15.6-inch 1080p 60Hz monitor. It also comes with 16 gigabytes of DDR3 memory and a 1 terabyte hybrid drive or an SSHD. Now, an interesting thing Lenovo did was their Ultra Bay, and that's where the second 755M is located in this laptop. So let me just show you. So here's the laptop. You press some stuff on the back to unlock it, and that's the second graphics card, which that's pretty cool that you can just swap it out and see it. It has a tiny little fan. It's pretty lightweight, but so with that Ultra Bay, you could just pop out the graphics card, put in a Blu-ray drive, another hard drive, another battery, or a different graphics card. So like, let's say you were on a budget and couldn't afford to buy the SLI version of this laptop, you could just buy the single card version, save up, and then buy the second card and just pop it into that Ultra Bay. The only issue is you really can't use different graphics cards together in SLI. Like, let's say you can't put a 755M with a 760M. So upgrading to a newer GPU, even within the same generation, is kind of impossible. Plus, when I researched this laptop and tried to find parts and whatever for it, the only other graphics card I could find was the older 750M. So this was kind of it. This was the top of the line that they had. But still, an interesting idea. Also, if you take a look at the second GPU's temperature when we do the benchmarks, you'll see that the second graphics card is running a lot hotter than the primary card, and that's because it's in that little enclosure with that tiny little fan, so the cooling is a lot worse, meaning it actually has potential to bottleneck. I'm not sure if it did it in any of these, but I wouldn't be surprised. For those of you who don't know what NVIDIA SLI or AMD Crossfire is, it's the way two or more graphics cards interact with each other on the same computer. So when it was a little more popular, you could have motherboards that had up to 4 PCIe 16 slots. I mean, you can put in 4 graphics cards, you link them all together with a cable, and you would get a lot more graphics horsepower than you would with a single card. So with this particular laptop, there are 2 graphics cards rendering, I believe it's the alternating frames, like one will do one, the second one will do the next frame, and so forth and so on. So it doesn't give double the graphics power like you get if you're getting 60 frames with just one and you add a second graphics card. It's not going to get you 120 frames. It's, from what I've seen, and I've only really tested it twice with this, and then I also a while ago had an older 4th gen i7 with I think they were AMD 280Xs in Crossfire, and in both of those scenarios I did see performance increases, which is nice, but it wasn't double. It was, I'd say 30 to 40% extra frames. That's just guessing. I really haven't checked and did math to figure out the percentages, but you get what I'm saying. It doesn't double the power of just having two cards compared to one. I know I'm probably butchering that explanation. If you really are serious in learning about Crossfire and SLI, Google is your best friend. But enough talk, let's get to benchmarking. Starting off with League of Legends running at the highest preset, we got an average of 105.3 frames per second and a 1% of 65.3 frames per second. As you can see, the game doesn't use the second graphics card. This game probably doesn't support SLI. Now we have Counter-Strike Global Offense, or CSGO, running at the highest preset. For an average frame rate, we got 99.1 frames per second and a 1% of 26.9 frames per second. This game ran pretty well, and you can see the game is utilizing both graphics cards. Now we have Grand Theft Auto 5 running in the normal presets with no advanced options. It got an average of 43.9 frames per second and a 1% of 26.4 frames per second. This is a little bit below the goal that I like to do with games for a nice 60 frames per second average, but it was still playable. Now, I made a mistake doing this benchmark. I forgot to take the frame cap off. I'm just too lazy to go back and test it again. Anyways, running at the lowest preset, Fortnite got an average of 54 frames per second and a 1% of 26.4 frames per second. So, despite the frame cap, the results are still kind of valid. This title also doesn't use the second graphics card, which is a little disappointing. Overwatch, on the lowest preset, ran well with an average of 77.1 frames per second and a 1% of 37.7 frames per second. This game also didn't utilize both graphics cards. And finally, we have Rainbow Six Siege with the lowest preset, coming in with 61.9 frames per second on average and a 1% of 42.6 frames per second. Both graphics cards were used, but the frame rates were almost exactly the same as the single 66M graphics card that was in the laptop we last looked at, the Lenovo Y510, which is kind of disappointing since this laptop has a newer graphics card, and two of them in fact. Now, I actually made some mistakes and I had to retest Siege a few months after I tested all the games previously, and back when I was testing all the rest of them, Siege actually wouldn't use both graphics cards. I mean, it did, but there was a lot of artifacting and the screen looked scrambled to the point where it was hard to get out of the game once I got into it. But since then, I have reinstalled Windows on the laptop, new drivers and all that kind of stuff, and now it actually uses it perfectly fine, as you can see. Now, the Cinebench score was much better, even though there is only a 100 megahertz difference from the CPU in the Y580, the laptop we did last time. Its score came out to be 1366 compared to the Y580's 1101. Now, if you want to know more about the previous laptop that we tested, the Lenovo Y580, you can go back and watch that video. A lot more information I'm going to give here. I was going through the benchmarks from both this laptop and the previous laptop, and I was wondering why, despite having a newer generation graphics card but actually having two, why were these results similar to the previous laptop, even though it's older and the graphics card wasn't as good? Because some games played better on this laptop, some played worse, but most of them played kind of the same. Well, I then realized that the Y580 has the lower screen resolution. In fact, it's almost half the resolution of this laptop. This means that it almost has to have double the graphics performance in order to continue to have the same amount of frame performance as you would on the previous model. So knowing that, it kind of makes it a little bit more difficult to compare the two laptops as the performances are similar. But it shows you to have better, sharper, higher resolution, there's some graphical costs, and this is it. Anyways, I thought it was really cool. I've never seen a laptop with two graphics cards, and I know they were out there and everything, but I've never actually personally gotten to have my hands on one. That's pretty cool. The one thing is, I think this was a 2014 or 15 laptop model. So SLI was a little bit more supported back then, I guess, but support for that, and especially in new games, just almost isn't there, and so a lot of games don't take advantage of the two graphics cards. That, and if you want to learn more about SLI and all that, micro stutter is a big issue, so it's not going to look smooth even though you're getting pretty good frames. And that's about it for this episode. I want to thank you guys for watching, and like I said, hopefully I'll be getting another episode out here in the next month or so, but we'll see. Anyways, thanks.